You're listening to the Hawke Media Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and executives crush the digital marketing game. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
You're listening to HawkeTalk. I'm here today with Daymond John. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. What's happening?
Yeah, thanks for coming. So always got to ask, let's take us back to like 3-4-year-old Daymond John. Were you did you come out and start taking pitches, shutting people down in kindergarten? Like, where did it all start?
Yeah.
Tell me about your childhood, your family, your parents.
Yeah, I wish, right? Born in Brooklyn, and shortly after that, my family and I would move to Queens, New York, and I went to actually Catholic school. My mom and dad scraped up enough money to send me to Catholic school, and happy little childhood, kind of playing baseball on the block and doing all that good stuff. And my parents ended up getting divorced when I was around 10 years old, but they were hardworking people. And I always, at that time, I really wanted to just start making money because I didn't want to make it that hard on my mother, because hip hop was starting to really come around. I started falling in love with the music, and I wanted to either buy an album, buy some sneakers that I thought, were part of hip hop. And I felt bad seeing my mother work so hard, all these jobs, to want to try to buy me this stuff and that she couldn't really afford. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it really came from, my initial desire to make money. And simultaneously make money and be part of a culture was probably the first time. So that was the little Daymond John, and then I would have different forms of hustle, whether it's raking leaves in the fall or shoveling snow in the winter or finding bike parts that people threw out or dumpster diving. And by the time 6 months came around, I would have a bike to ride and then sell, stuff like that.
Nice. And so you were doing all these different hustles, and at what point did you do sort of your first, let's say, business, like your first kind of thing that you stuck with that was repetitive? It sounds like you stuck with the bicycle building a little bit, but when did you first have that exposure to selling something, growing something? Was it FUBU from the start, or was there something before that?
No. I actually had a livery service. It was like a van. It was like carpooling. And in our neighborhoods, you did, but you shouldn't have done it. You're really going against the city. But you would go to every bus stop and pick up people just like a bus, but you were just a small version of a bus, and they would pay you $1 to get off and get on, and you would drive them, because we lived in what they called a two-fare zone in Queens. That's why the houses were a little cheaper, because it was two fares. It was you had to take a bus to the train and the train to get to the city. So everybody would get off of the train, and they would need to take a bus into the, obviously deeper into the boroughs, but we would be there, the vans. We'd get there, we'd probably be there 100 feet or 200 feet early prior to the bus stop, or so the women or people didn't have to walk that far. And when I drove you down the block, not only would I take you off the main, drop you off in the main block, but in the event there was 12 or 1 o'clock at night, I would take you 2 blocks into where your house was and just come back around. And it was safer for people in general. So it was kind of like this cottage industry. And that was my first business, real business. And my business was, I was doing that from around 18 to around 22 years old.
And how'd you get into that?
Really hard hours.
What exposed you to that?
Seeing the van drivers drive down the block and going, hey man, why don't I just get my own damn van?
And I'm curious, how'd you get the money to get the van? I always loved the detail side of this.
I worked at Red Lobster. I also worked at various other places. I saved up money. See, I was always somebody who was trying to leverage whatever I had, right? So whether it was I built a bicycle so that I could ride it and eventually sell it, it was let me get a van, because simultaneously I wasn't selling FUBU yet. I was trying to sell clothing, but simultaneously I was like, okay, the van, I have a car. On my way to go someplace, I can make $20 picking up people back and forth, and then I could take the seats out of the van and put clothing in there and go to a flea market one day. So I was always trying to maximize whatever I had. Yep,
got it. And curious, because it's fun to see the disparity here in a lot of different entrepreneurs. How was school for you? It sounds like you were hustling at a young age and trying to make money and help your mom out and buy stuff for yourself. Were you an A student all through high school, or did you pay attention a lot, or were you kind of the other end or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I was I was pretty bad in school. I was a C student. Well, first of all, I'm dyslexic, and I wouldn't know that until late 20s, early 30s. So I had a challenge in obviously history and in English, but I excelled in science and math. And I wouldn't say excel, but I was a B student. But even because I was so discouraged of being yelled at from my father when he was around, and my mother loved me and she treated me with a lot of respect, but because I was discouraged of the reading part of it, even my excelling in math and everything else, if there was any part of it that you had to read, I would shun away from it. So I wasn't really good at school. But what did that do? Well, right around I think it was 10th grade or 11th grade, they had something called a co-op program in my school where you can go work at a company 1 week, and then you go to school every alternate week, and you got credits for it. So I ended up working as a messenger for a company called First Boston, which would end up being venture capitalists / angel investors, and I ended up working there, and I think that taught me a little bit about finance as well.
And did that expose you to the idea, when you started your first business, was that part of it? You're around this entrepreneurial kind of culture, or at least people that invest in? And you went,
no,
I could do one of these? Okay.
No, it wasn't the way that we think of investment traditionally today, like a lot of startups and I was a messenger, right? I wasn't open to a lot of the closed door conversations, but I did get to see people that looked extremely wealthy, and were extremely wealthy. I was on 55th Street, I think it was 55th or 53rd in Manhattan, between Madison and Park, and over here was Rolex, over here was so forth, and I would see those private bankers or whatever, pulling up in Maseratis and Lamborghinis and going to these stores, and they all just worked in the building. Yep. And I was like, wow, there is money to be made doing this type of stuff. I'm not sure how to do it. Nobody in there looks like me, but there's money around here. Yep,
got it. All right, so going back, so you sort of did the band thing from 18 to 22. What happened after that?
Well, my life kind of all happened at the same time, right? I really started FUBU in 1989, but I would close it 3 times from 89 to 92 because I ran out of capital. But that was, when I was 20, right? 89, I was 20 years old. So I'm working FUBU, I'm working Red Lobster, and I'm working the van at the same time.
Yep.
Right? So they all kind of blended together. And then I decided to stop the van around 2021. I was burnt out from it. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was making $300 a day, but by the time I paid for insurance, I had a beat up van. By the time I paid to get the thing fixed, and if only one Department of Transportation ticket, if they caught me, the Department of Transportation, in the bus zone picking people up, that was $2,000 in tickets. So I realized that I wasn't netting anything after paying for everything. And then I just quit that, went back to Red Lobster, and used the van to help me with FUBU.
Got it. And so what inspired you with FUBU? 20 years old, wanting to start fashion. Where did that come from?
Well, it came from a frustration that I was buying anything and everything that I could see in music videos, and I was told whether I believe 90% of it was rumors now, that these fashion people disliked us. They did not want people of color, people who loved hip hop, rappers, inner city kids, whatever you want to call us at the time, right? It was not just the color. They didn't want us wearing their clothes. But this was a new emerging music that I loved. Hip hop was fairly new at that time. It was really only, from a commercial standpoint, it was probably only 4 years old. And I really was obsessed with it. So that was the frustration of saying, when can I, who's ever going to make clothes for the people that love, who they're making it for, and the music. So just like I saw the van drive by and I said, maybe I can do that. I saw Cross Colors and another guy named Carl Kanai making clothes, and I said, wow, I can do it too. So I'm not going to say that we were the first. We were not the first. We were inspired by 3 or 4 other really great companies.
And I love that because I see that kind of in common with a lot of successful people, that it's why not me is a big part of the mindset. It's not that they're grandiose or they're hyper confident or even cocky about it. It's just it's more of the opposite, where they're just like, why can't I do that? They did it. Why can't I? It's a little bit more of a lack of barriers and a lack of mental blocking than it is thinking that you're going to be grandiose. So you start going into it, did you have a lot of contacts in sort of the hip hop space too? Did you have a lot of friends that had, made it at that point? Like what inspired that side?
Well, they weren't friends. I'm fortunate enough to say I had a lot of contacts, but most of those, the good thing is I grew up in Hollis, Queens, and Hollis, Queens has, if I would run off the names of the people in Hollis, Queens, you would say, what the hell's in the water?
Yeah.
At that time, it was Salt and Pepper, LL Cool J, Run DMC, some of the Fat Boys were from there, Tribe Called Quest, Onyx, so many other, at least another 15, I could say,
Yeah.
Ja Rule, 50 Cent, a lot of them. So some of them were my friends, not the big artists, because LL Cool J and Run DMC were like massively huge. And they were one generation older than me, and that type of separation when you're in a neighborhood is pretty big, when it's like, oh, that was one of my brother's friends. But the ones I did grow up with, and my closest friends were me and a guy named Irv Gotti, who created something called Murder Inc., and another guy named Hype Williams, who became a very famous video director. And we would go on tours when we were about 16 years old, be on the Raising Hell tour, or some of these tours, the Fresh Fest tour, some of the first tours in the United States when it came to rap. And that's where I started to really get an understanding of that there was an escape from the hood that didn't have anything to do with drugs, and you can actually make money doing something you love.
Yep.
But I couldn't rap. I could dance, and I actually had auditioned for Houdini to be a dancer for a group named Houdini, and they said okay, and my mother said no, I'm not. You're 16 years old. You're not going around the world on a tour. So they ended up hiring a kid named Jermaine Dupri out of Atlanta for that tour.
Heard of him.
Yeah. So till today, I know Jermaine now, but I found out when I saw him in one of those videos, I was like, man, that could have been me.
Yeah, crazy. Got it. And so what your first outlet for launching FUBU, was it having those relationships with the director and having those tours in your background that you went to the people you had met along that way to get it out there? Or how'd you start?
No, my first relationship was standing on a corner and selling it to people, and then it was realizing that I had enough money to buy maybe 50 shirts, and if I would have dressed all the cool kids and the rappers in the neighborhood with the 50 shirts, they may or may not worn them. If they wore them, they would wear them once and give them away. So I made sure that I bought a bunch of 4X, 5X, and 6X, and I gave it to the big bodyguards and the big guys in the neighborhood, because they didn't have fashionable stuff to wear. They only had, limited styles at Rochester, big and tall, big white shirt, big black shirt. Yep. And they would wear that shirt 10 times a month. And those guys would be in front of the red rope at a club, in front of a stage, in front of the music, in front of the cameras in a music video, and in front of the artists, because they were normally bodyguards or big guys. They were walking billboards. And that was the first place that those were my influence. I found a subsegment of a market on people who are not being addressed and valued in the way that they should be, and I made them feel special. And
how did you find those guys? Was it just you went to the shows and to the clubs and grabbed a guy up front?
Went to the shows, went to the clubs, and when I realized that we were on a video set and they were kicking everybody else off, I said, not only am I here to dress the artist, big man, I'm here to dress you. I got a shirt for you. And they were like, all right, kick everybody else off except for this little guy right here.
Perfect. Made friends. And so how long did it take to start to get traction? Give me the story there. Like, you got the first 50 shirts, you dressed some guys. Like, how did it get going from there?
Well, like I said, I started in '89. I closed it down several times till 1992, and I started getting traction around 94, 95. Because 92, 93 was a very busy year for us, where we got put in a lot of videos. We got put in a Wu-Tang video, a Method Man video, a Mariah Carey video, Brand Nubians, and Miss Jones, and I think 2 other videos. And then I think 93, 94, we got put in a LL Hey Lover video, and that was where all the kids were seeing their latest and greatest, getting their information from, music videos, right? You weren't seeing any information on the news, the internet didn't exist, and social media wasn't out there yet. So by those videos being in heavy rotation, right around 94, 95, we really started getting public recognition of who are these guys, and then we started getting local interviews, and the local interviews added to more videos, and the more videos added to more local interviews, and then you would really start to you would see us in a heavy way. I think we'd sign our distribution and manufacturing deal in '96, In 97, then FUBU started to really get to become nationwide. 98, we started shipping globally.
Got it. And so it sounds like there was actually, as you said, traction hit in 95. So those videos, you didn't have like, it didn't blow out, open the walls right away, or did it? Like when you were in 92, 93, you were starting getting all these different videos. Did it not really blow it wide open? Because I guess you didn't have D2C back then. You still had to get into stores or get distribution.
Absolutely. So first of all, we had limited funding and a little bit limited manufacturing. We weren't shipping really, for the most part, all nationally. So we were just building a vacuum. We were in a vacuum. Really much in the video. People were just like, "Well, what is this? What is this?" I mean, the anticipation was growing, and I would, looking from the outside in, I would assume that the kids are all around the country and around the world would see all these New York rappers with this brand, and they would say, "What is that brand?" That brand is just a New York brand, probably. And as it started to spread, then once it started hitting the stores, it was pent up demand of 3, 4, 5 years of these kids seeing it and not being able to get it. And again, like you said, there was really no B2C at that time. Meaning I couldn't sell it directly to them, so this is where they were getting it.
My mom used to actually dress me in FUBU in the mid 90s. I love this stuff. So, but thinking back, I had FUBU too. So, it sounds like right when it took off. So you went global in 98. Did you end up raising money ever for it? Did you, as an investor now, did you ever have any investors? No,
we never raised money for it because we ended up signing a really great deal with a manufacturer and distributor. So we kind of skipped that process.
Got it. And I assume that deal was like good net terms and things, so you could finance using them. Is that? Got it. Well, awesome. And so after 98, give me the story. What happened next? How did it keep scaling? Like, would love the timeline.
Yeah, 98, we started to take on licenses. So licenses, whether it be the categories of boots, bags, ladies, boys, fragrance, and things of that nature, bedding. And also we would license out territories. You can have these 3 countries. You have to you have to build freestanding stores within 5 years, X amount of freestanding stores. Yeah. And that's how we started to scale.
And how did you learn that? Like, did you have great mentors or people around you, or where did you learn to do all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our manufacturing and distribution partners, guys named Norman and Bruce, I'd already been in the business for many, many years. They were second generation of people who were making clothes, so they already knew a lot of that stuff. But we were also learning together, and growing together. So that's what happened. But we also, right around 2000, we looked and realized that, of course, fashion is fickle, and the FUBU would probably slow down, like most brands do. Whether you talk about Lee's or Levi's or Benetton or FUBU or whatever the case is, you got this, kind of wave that goes like this, and it comes back, obviously. We decided to start investing in other brands because we knew what our skill set was. Our skill set was not that we were the best designers of the world, but we knew manufacturing and distribution and marketing. So we partnered up and acquired brands like Willie Esco and Coogee and Heather Red and even Ted Baker. We took the license for Ted Baker in the United States, but we didn't do really well because we weren't retail operators, and they wanted to build retail stores. I think they're doing really good right now with the retail stores. We took Kappa, the soccer brand, but soccer never took off in the United States the way we would hope it would. So, we would, fall short on probably, 8 of the 10 that we picked, and that's just the process.
That's venture, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. And so did you ever end up selling FUBU, or do you still own it today?
No, we never sold it. A big rumor that people thought that we did sell the company. We never sold it.
Nice.
For many reasons, whether it wasn't a time or the right buyer, because it is something. It's our baby, and we feel that there's a legacy there that people need to understand, and so we never sold it. We love what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, fast forwarding, when did Shark Tank start?
Shark Tank started, I believe, 2008. We're going on our 13th season.
Okay.
So I think it first airing was 2009.
Okay.
I think we shot it in 2008. Yeah.
And how did that come to be for you? Like, was it already a show and Mark Burnett had figured out this thing, or was it you had an idea? Like, would love to know where that got started.
Yeah, it was already a very popular show. It was already in 3 territories. It came out of Japan, and then it was also doing really well in London, in England, and then it was also one of the top shows in Canada at the
So
time.
is that
So
Dragon's Den,
it
or
was
what's it called? Shark Tank.
correct. Dragon's Den. It's called
It's
Dragon's Den in
yeah.
those territories.
Yep.
I believe it was called Tiger's Den in Japan at first.
Got it. Okay, got it. So I always thought that they came after, and so it was already popular there. And then how did they approach you? Did you hear about it? How did you get involved with it?
Yeah, so they approached me. They called me up and asked me to be part of it, and I said, "All right, no problem. I'll try it." And I never thought the show would work, but yeah, they approached me.
That's how it goes. So, and how has that, so it sounds like at that point, this was during that period when you were buying other brands and looking to operate other brands. Is that fair?
No, at that period, that time, it was the fact that the market we were going into the Great Recession, and nobody was buying clothes when they couldn't pay their mortgage. Yeah. So I went into Shark Tank looking to get other opportunities, meaning I was only getting pitched clothing lines, and I'd rather get pitched, something else that I could take to the department store so I can gain more real estate in the department store. Seeing I already had the relationships with the department store, I can say, hey, give me this space in electronics or lotions or bedding or plateware or something else like that. So it was really out of me trying to diversify my portfolio.
Got it. Awesome. And so what's been the experience like early on? How did that change your career, change your path, so to speak, having that TV platform?
It changed in perception of us. A lot of people are always put in a box, and people thought that maybe just because I happen to make oversized jeans for the rap community, that maybe that's all I was. And I think that as people started to see me on television as well as other sharks, they realized that the fundamentals of business are the fundamentals of business, no matter what business you're in. Also, when I go on the show to hopefully get some great deals, I realize that we have a bigger responsibility, because there's a lot of kids watching the show, a lot of families sitting on the edge of their seats for hope, and that the show is more inspirational than a great deal, and then we get caught up in the great benefit of being able to invest in other people's dreams, and know that as we invest in their dreams, we will win or we will fail, but there are other people that will come out of that world as a viewer and go out and become the next leader, the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs, and it's a great feeling. So,
yep.
We learned that we were there to motivate people as well.
Yep, which I've watched a lot. You guys definitely do. And I think you motivate a ton of the audience. I think it's incredible what that show has done at a time when entrepreneurship became such a draw. I don't think pre-2010, give or take, entrepreneurship had the same sort of, lack of a better word, sex appeal. I just wrote an article for Rolling Stone around the idea that entrepreneurs have become the new rock stars in the past decade. And before that, it wasn't necessarily, people grew up aspiring to be a rock star, whether it's musician or athlete or astronaut, which, I think astronaut would be a good thing still too, and all of it. But entrepreneur was never in their vernacular. And now you hear kids saying they want to, get into tech at 8 years old and things like that. So I think it's really cool what you guys have built, because I think you guys do play a big role in that, guys and girls. And so over time, I'm wondering, how has that changed your career? I know you do a ton of speaking now. You've obviously written books and all these other things. Was that really opened your mind up to the sort of idea of personal brand and building out a platform for yourself, or has that more expanded your investment portfolio? How has things shifted over the past, 13 years since you started that?
Well, it's done it all, right? But it hasn't done anything that I wasn't already somewhat doing. The reason why they saw me on Donnie Deutsch and those shows was I was out there talking about my first book, so I was already an author. And the book was on entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. As I shared with you, I was already investing in companies, so I was doing that as well. Speaking, I had already done speaking a little bit prior to that, but because of the not necessarily having the big platform, it was easy for people to say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And now it affirmed more because of they've had hundreds of hours of watching me to say, I guess he does know what he's talking about, or or don't book him because we see that he doesn't know. But at least it gave them the evidence and or the history to be able to be more confident in what they've done in regards to me speaking. So none of it was necessarily fairly new, but is it all being done on a much higher level? Yes. Was I known? Was I a household name? No. Was I known? Yes.
Yeah.
Did I know what I've written, what I've been, on my 5th book now? Probably not. I probably wrote 2.
Yeah.
So all of it has just been, heightened.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as far as investments go, it sounds like from what I know, Bombas has been the best one. Are there other great investments that you've had off there?
Yeah, listen, I have a lot of great investments, but Bombas is clearly the one because not only the size of it, but from the fact that I've learned from it as well, about how to solve a social issue, or not solve a social issue, address a social issue, how to deal B2C, as we said, I wasn't doing that earlier in my career, how to use social media for good, and how the consumer now has changed their thought process and who they invest in and who they buy from.
Yeah, we met Dave about the same time, and he's such a good guy too to back. Like, you bet it on a great jockey too. And I remember talking to him back then when I was getting started pretty much too on my company now, and trying to figure out a way to help him, and just literally ending the conversation with, you know what, you're doing everything right. You got this. I can't help you. Call me if you need me. I'm here to support you, but thanks for the time, kind of thing. He's close friends with a lot of my good buddies too. So I've just always admired what a good down-to-earth guy he is too.
He's a good human. Him and Randy are just good human beings.
Yeah, agreed. And so the sort of bringing us up to now, what's kind of, a day in the life or a year in the life look like? Like, what kind of things are you focused on aside from the show? I know it's obviously still going, but what kind of things are on your plate? What are you looking at these days?
Yeah, well, of course, the show takes up a certain amount of time than any of my other privately held companies or that I'm in. Then, who I advise or sit on boards for, or just, are trying to help them with their narrative, what's going on, where can I be either the public facing person, because obviously that adds more value to certain things, and then my family and my health. Those are generally, how I cut them up.
Yeah. So basically a lot of time investing and advising for those investments, spending time with them is on a professional side. Obviously family and health, always very important, but on the professional side, is it really focused on that aside from filming Shark Tank? Is that fair?
Well, I have my own company, right? So we have everything from curriculums to FUBU to other investments that people may not publicly see. So I have my Shark Tank investments, which is those are very specific, because what happens is, if I do the handshake deal on 15 companies a year, well, I got to drill down on 10, because 5 probably fall aside for due diligence purposes, and then out of the 10, maybe 3 of them don't air. So now I got to drill down on 7 that I don't, if I wasn't on Shark Tank, well, we can take our time and see how these things go. But if you're going to air April 1 and, we didn't close everything up, we got to, so those take a lot of time. Then you got the show business time, shooting the show, promoting the show, all the interviews that come along. That can easily take up 3 months of my life. So now I have the other 3 quarters of the year to focus on family and health and whatever we might do in my private life. And then the other half of the year is, my brands that I personally own. And then the last quarter is where I'm frontward facing or representing or consulting other brands.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Well, just 2 last questions for you. Number 1, what's next? What do you want in the future? What are you looking towards? What are you building towards and excited about?
More ways to bring value to people that are doing great things in the world, charitable organizations, or people who are trying to create real change, or organizations that are trying to create change, whether it be, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, equality, gender equality, things of that nature. I think I am going to spend more time doing that type of stuff. Of course, I can't take my eye off the ball of all the great partners that allowed me to invest in them. And last but not least is hopefully, get out there and make some more investments, and hopefully motivate some people that feel like they've been marginalized and they haven't had their shot, and to say, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Beautiful. And on that note, last question, for anybody trying to get started, sort of get out of their own way, whatever it is, what's sort of that one piece of advice you have that isn't sort of cliche? Like, is there something that you're like, I really wish someone told me this, or I think this is the most important thing people need to know that they don't normally hear?
Yeah, it's not cliche, but it is really firmly simultaneously do your homework and start taking steps forward in whatever you're trying to do, and try to use little to zero money. That's a very important discipline that you must have. And if you say that it's impossible to do it, well, then you're not set to do it. But if you take on that challenge and say, all right, I'm gonna do my homework, I'm gonna take affordable steps, and I'm going to figure this thing out without a massive amount of money. And if you do that and you start to see things unravel and say, all right, well, I did it with no money, but if I put a little $200 in and $500 in, okay, I can see it grow. And once you perfect it in this way to a very small audience, you can replicate that around the world like I did. As you said, did I raise money? No. I perfected what I was doing with those big guys, with 8 stores in New York City. That's it.
Yep.
And instead of trying to get 16 stores or 28 stores or whatever case is, concentrate on those 8 stores. So I kept building those 8 stores and building everything I was doing. So now I wasn't selling just t-shirts there. I was selling t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and just the 8 stores. Then I was able to get that deal to replicate it across the country and across the world by just focusing very, very small, as we call it, proof of concept.
Yep, love that. Great advice. Well, Daymond, thank you so much for being on HawkeTalk. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, brother.
You've been listening to the Hawke Media Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.